That's really the defining difference between us and the left, is we believe government, which is the power of force, government, which is a monopoly on force, is there to protect property. They believe it's there to redistribute property. And you know what? We're really at a crossroads. We have no choice anymore, my friends, because we've got a budget that is unsustainable. This president is spending 25% of the GDP. He's consuming 25% of national income. States are spending $2 trillion more. We're up over 40% of everything we earn being siphoned off for the government. Now, it's unsustainable. We're not going to be able to service the debt. What are we going to do? We're going to borrow more? No, because our creditors won't lend us money. Are you going to raise taxes to solve the debt? You'd have to double the tax rate to 70, 75% to even get close to solving the debt. You know, if you raised the top marginal tax rate to 100% of everybody, for everybody who's making over $100,000 this year, you would not solve the deficit. You would not raise enough money to solve a $1.6 trillion deficit. You cannot tax your way out of a tax and spend problem. That is how we got here. That is not the path to salvation. Now, if you can't tax your way out, you can't borrow because the creditors aren't going to be there, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to print money. And if we print money, if the Fed flies planes over here and they start dropping dollars, are we richer? No, of course not. We haven't increased goods and services. That's the wealth of a society, not money. All you do is increase the auction, the bidding of the auction, and you get inflation, then you get hyperinflation, then you get a default, then you get a devaluation of the dollar, then your savings are wiped out, then the store shelves are wiped out, and you have total chaos, which sows the seeds of a revolution. Need I mention the Third Reich? So we have no choice. The grown-ups in America understand we have no choice. If Junior, otherwise known as Harry Reid, if Junior is spending too much money, at some point you've got to sit him down, the grown-ups do, and say, your allowance is done. The only choice we have right now is for grown-ups to stand up to every special interest. You know, right now I'm located in the Midwest, although after spending the spring in North Carolina, I'm thinking about relocating. But somebody has got to march into Iowa, for instance, where you have a bipartisan agreement on the most inefficient fuel man has ever known. It's called ethanol. It is the reason the corn is $7 a bushel right now. We divert 40% of our corn crop to an inefficient fuel while food prices are skyrocketing. True. Where do we get these leaders? Somebody needs to go into Iowa and have the temerity to be an adult and say, you know what? The gravy train is over. We love agriculture. We're going to make certain you have export markets. We're going to make certain the estate tax is zeroed out. We're going to get the environmentalists off your back. But we're not going to subsidize any business in America. You can't have success if you don't allow failure. We need to go to Goldman Sachs and say, look, if you want to hedge your bets, if you want to play derivatives on mortgage-backed securities, have at it. Profit's not a dirty word. But guess what? We're not going to privatize profit and socialize loss. If you go down the tubes, you go down the tubes. There's no question in my mind. I mean, zero nada. And Art Laffer believes this now. A number of economists believe this now. Had we not engineered the bailout of 2008, had we not bailed out all of those companies, starting with Bear Stearns, although it didn't make any sense because we bail out Bear Stearns, and then we let Lehman Brothers fail, and then we bail out Detroit, even though that wasn't in the bill of the bailouts. But nevertheless, had we not bailed out those companies, I frankly think we'd be in the midst of a recovery right now. We would have restored the concept of prudence. You know, the marketplace has one thing government doesn't. It has market discipline. It has market discipline. If I loan you money to start your business, if I loan you money to start your coffee shop, I'm going to make certain you're making a profit. Or guess what? The money dries up. When we loan money to the government, well, we don't really loan money to the government now, do we? I mean, deficits are just deferred taxation. But when we give money to the government, there is no market discipline. Milton Friedman used to say, the most inefficient way that money can be spent is for somebody else to spend it on somebody else. Think about that for a moment. If I earn my own money and I spend it on something, I'm going to be as efficient. I want to get the best deal I can. If you give me $1 and I go out and buy a cup of coffee, I'm still going to find the best deal I can. But if I get money from somebody else and I spend it on somebody else, I have absolutely no incentive to be what? Efficient, to be wise. That's what government does. And that's why the only choice we have at this crucial crossroads in our American fiscal and financial health, indeed the health of our republic as we know it, is, as this young man says right over here, to cut spending now. To cut spending now. It doesn't matter how you finance government. Whether you tax, whether you inflate, whether you borrow, it all comes out of the private economy. And you know, there's this great class warfare now. You know, it's a little bit like our friends in education, God bless them. When they need money, quick, grab a kid, hold it up. You've got adults hiding behind children. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. I got to retire at 58, but it's for the kids. Well, you know, we're in the same boat now. When the Democrats need more money, they say, well, we're just going to tax the rich, the top 2% of income earners. Now, forget for a moment that the top 2% of income earners actually pay 62% of the federal income tax. Forget that for a moment. I'm not going to sit up here and defend the rich because, quite frankly, too many of them are liberal goons. But I'm not defending the rich. I am defending the American dream of getting rich. And that's what this is all about. I don't defend the well-to-do because they're rich. I defend them because they're individuals. The unique American experiment, as Thomas Paine said, was that we defined our rights individually, not collectively. And when you raise the individual above the mob, you have America. We are getting awfully close to a mobocracy. We're getting awfully close where, because we have shed the chains, as Jefferson called them, of the Constitution, if 51% of the people win an election, they feel they can do any damn thing they want to the other 49%. I got news for you. Maybe they want that. Maybe that's Europe, but I can guarantee you that is not the United States of America. The United States of America says, you know, it's great, we want self-government, but we have protections. We have fundamental protections for the individual. Madison talked about this and with his soliloquy on factions in Federalist number 10. They did not trade the tyranny of the monarchy for the tyranny of the majority. So what did they give us? They gave us the Constitution. They understood that government is not reason, government is not eloquence, government is force. You know, we're here on April 15th. If you don't think government is force, don't pay your taxes. You'll find out that government is force. It is the largest monopoly the world has ever known. And so the framers weren't about to sit around the campfire and say, you know, we have these sort of Lockean absolute rights in a state of nature without any governments at all. We are all born absolutely free. We get our birthrights from the Almighty. We're born free. Why would any society trade in those absolute rights to be tyrannized by a government? They wouldn't. The framers' idea was, let's set up a government, quite frankly, to expand liberty. Let's set up a government to keep the big guy from beating up on the little guy. But, in Madison's most famous statement, he said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. But the problem is in this. You've got to allow the government to govern, but you also must oblige the government to be controlled. And for that, they gave us the Constitution, the hallmark of a republic. And I'm telling you, and not with great glee, we are on the road to losing the Constitution. We are on the road to losing the Constitution, and we were on the road in the 20th century. What a number of constitutional scholars call the Revolution of 37. We had a president, we had a subservient Supreme Court that amended the Constitution without ever touching the document. It was called Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was called the New Deal, and this country has never been the same since. You know, and now we're seeing the results of this. You might sit there and wonder, how is it possible, Jason, that if we have a Constitution and the government can only do what is in the Constitution? That's the concept of enumerated powers doctrine. We have the rights. We don't get our rights from the Bill of Rights. In fact, you scholars out there will know that Hamilton, Madison, and Jay didn't want a Bill of Rights. They said, why do we have to have a Bill of Rights? We've only given the government these powers in the body of the document. If it's not listed, they can't do it. So of course the government can't control speech. We didn't give it the power to control speech. The anti-federalists insisted, but the bottom line is it was an enumerated powers doctrine. If it's not in there, they can't do it. So you might be wondering, how is it possible then that this administration can have the audacity, the temerity to tell you that the federal government will dictate that you must buy a commercial product as a condition of citizenship? It's called Obamacare and the mandate to buy health insurance. Tell me where, somebody tell me where that is listed in the Constitution of the United States. Commerce Clause. You know what? If that Congress thing doesn't work, you've got a spot on the administration.
I didn't agree.
I know. He's absolutely correct. The Elastic Commerce Clause, the federal government's power to regulate interstate commerce.